All right, you guys, welcome back to another episode of The Common Theory. I am incredibly happy to present to you guys today one of the new theorists. This is our man Ankylosaur. I'm very proud to introduce you guys, and if you haven't known this name, get to know this individual. He has been topping every single event. This is a person you definitely need to know, and I'm very proud to be able to have him here with us and have him here literally with us, you guys. So, David, please introduce yourself, my man.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for having me. Um, my name's uh, David. I go by Ankylosaur online. You can call me Ank if that's easier. I'm an old man. I've been playing Magic since about fourth edition. Took a long break for a while. Came back in original Zendikar since what was that 2009? So I've been playing pretty steadily since then. I'm mostly a 60 card popper player, and I used to play a lot of casual EDH. And now I'm almost entirely dedicated to competitive popper EDH. Um, I, I found since RIW had their announcement of the tournament, I sort of threw everything I had into learning the format and learning all the decks. And um, I don't know, it's a very skill testing format. I love it very much. And while I'm one of the newer players here for sure, I've been enjoying competitive popper just so much these past 6 months or so.
Yeah, you have a you really touched on a really great point. I just wanted to touch on, if you don't mind, David. It's you really just said it's a very skill intensive format, and I really have to agree. We've been playing about the same amount of time. I started back in the Stronghold era,
Oh,
so
sure.
yeah, I definitely know. Yeah, I mean, I was obviously really young then as well, but it's it's one of these formats. Like, this popper really brings you back to those old days, right? Like those Odyssey Wild Mongrel days, right? Those
Mhm.
Apocalypse Spirit Monger Consume Strength days, right? It makes you have to know how to play the game to win in this format. I've kind of felt that way about it. What
Yeah.
what do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. There's especially in the competitive realm of the format too. There's a lot of interaction. There's a lot of synergies, but there's so many like fewer broken bombs. It's felt very rare to me that somebody plays a card that on its own just feels completely unbeatable. Um, you know, and I think it really does reward um,
Practice, right?
some yeah practice for
Yeah,
sure. You
exactly.
getting to know the decks in the format, getting to know um, the interactions and the combos that are out there and available. Absolutely.
Yeah, it really does show, because like there are certain players in the format that have actually demonstrated exactly that, where it's just like practice makes perfect, right? And it's really nice to show that and demonstrate it. But with that said, let's dive in, man. You're here with us,
Yeah.
and you're you're our new theorist, and sadly, Puzzle. Big shout out to you, my man. You're not here with me today, and you will be here with me soon enough. And David's here for you right now, but he'll be here in a future episode with you as well. So, big shout out
Yeah,
to
for
you,
sure.
Puzzle. Can't wait to have you back, my bro. But let's dive in and let's kind of explain what we're doing, my bro. We're gonna be talking about this sanctuary event, and we're gonna be talking about like the ramifications that this event may have on the Riches to Rags event. So let me just kind of go right in, if you don't mind, and just dive into the top four of the Sanctuary Series Open.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. So, I mean, I'm just gonna hit with you first, my bro. Like, top four. Let's hit with you, Ankylosaur, my bro. You are Gretchen. Uh, Hit me with it, man. Like, I don't have much to say about this. Me and Puzzle have talked about this deck so much in the past, and I think you did everybody a great favor by literally stating right at the top, the little blurb, you swap a turn aside for avoid fate. And you actually made it clear as day, and you just played B Fine's list. You just swapped a
Yep.
card. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on the deck? Like, what do you think as a whole?
I think the deck is, to me at least, it feels pretty clear that it's one of, if not the best combo decks in the format, for sure. It's very redundant. It's very resilient. Um, and I think it's like super well built. I did play 99 out of 100 cards of Bobby's list.
Mm-hmm.
I've also looked and tested with Puzzle's list as well. Um, and Puzzle Box's list is maybe 5 cards different from Bobby's. It's very similar.
Yep.
And I think going forward, I would probably try and squeeze a shore up in from Puzzle's running a shore up, uh, and Bobby's running a spell pierce or something, some other similar interactive piece over it. I would
Got
try
it.
and squeeze a shore up in there. I like that card a lot. It's both a protection spell and an untapper for one of your land untapping creatures, so you can get another Gretchen activation off in a pinch.
Hmm.
I think it's a really versatile card that I would love to try and find room for in there. But really though, I've been so happy with how Gretchen plays. It doesn't take too much for the deck to combo off, and its backup plan of just kind of sitting back, playing draw go, putting extra lands into play, very strong as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question because I know this card hasn't seen a lot of play recently. I don't know if you've seen it in your recent testing or not, but Lorien Revealed. I know it should be almost like dummy proof at this point. I'm not trying to insult
Mhm.
anyone's intelligence with this question, but like, is it good? Like, is it just obvious? Yes, it's good, or yes, it's good.
Oh, I love it for
Yeah.
sure. It's it lets you uh, you can replace a land with it if you want. I don't know if Bobby or Puzzle had just like chopped the land for it, but it's another copy of Mystic Sanctuary if you need Mystic Sanctuary. It's also a green source you can tutor up. Turn one, you keep a hand that's you know
Oh,
several
all
snow covered
islands.
islands plus
Got it.
Lorien. You
Yeah.
can go and grab Rimewood Falls or Tangled Islet, and so it fixes your mana as well. And later in the game, you need to draw 3 cards. It's got you covered there too.
Yep.
It's so good.
That
It's
makes
it's such
sense.
a wonderful addition to both the deck and the format for sure.
Yep, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, I mean, that's pretty much all I kind of have for Gretchen. Is there anything you really want to add? Because, I mean, I know Puzzle and me have really beat this deck down into the dirt, specifically him, have really beat this deck down into the dirt. Is there anything you kind of want to add about it, or kind of just
Yeah,
stock Gretchen, or.
my list does feel very stock Gretchen. One of the things I've noticed, and this is just having played a handful of games with it online, other people, Puzzle for sure, could maybe add his um, his observations on this, but Gretchen doesn't always draw as much aggro as I would sort of expect her to. In
Hmm.
part, I think because you have so many turns where you do sit back and don't really do anything and hold your mana up for interaction and maybe draw a card or two on someone's end step. Like your creatures are a lot more innocuous than like a Malcolm, for instance.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I think that makes
that is
some
true.
players I think that makes some players assess you as less of a threat than you actually are. Um, which is a huge boon to the Gretchen. Kill Gretchen first is what I'm saying. Like she's she's
we
scarier than
don't,
she looks, and
don't
like
tell people that, bro. Don't tell.
I know,
We've
yeah,
actually said that here. We've said that here. Actually,
yeah,
Puzzle has literally said that here. He said, "Don't kill the Gretchen. Kill the land of tappers. That's how
yep,
you beat the deck." The
yeah,
end. So,
yeah. Go after the land untappers.
yep.
Go after the Gretchen player as well because they can at any point they can draw Freed and win the game. It's happened while I was testing for RIW. You know,
Yep.
Gretchen's dead to rights at like 2 life, takes it untap. There's the enchantment. The
Win
game
the
is
game.
over. And
Yep.
like there are not there are not a ton of combo decks that can do that in the format. Sometimes Malcolm will do that, you'll draw the extra piece that you need. But um, yeah, it's got so many redundant pieces, as I've mentioned before. The deck is designed to do one thing, and it does it so well. Yeah.
Yep, I could see it. Well, with that, let's actually move on, my man. So I'm going to scoot back. Let me pull up Malcolm Kedis here. So Malcolm
Who would
Kedis. So
who
we
would play
went.
such a deck?
Yep. I mean, we went from you, and now we're to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, guys, yours truly. I top four as well this event. And yeah, I'm actually playing something a little bit less traditional that you guys have seen me play in the past. I'm playing Malcolm and Kedis. So this is actually my daughter's deck. There's reasonings why I was playing it instead of her, which, if you don't know already, she did win the event. But we'll get to a little bit that here in the near future. But let's kind of delve into this deck. So from my point of view, and you could kind of hit me with this, David, give me your perspective on it. I kind of find this to be a relatively stock, generic Malcolm Kedis list. I'm just kind of playing the pingers. I'm just kind of changing the creature types and trying to win the game. I got kind of the most generic draw spells from Ponder and Preordains to the most generic big draw spells to Deep Analysis and Secrets of the Golden City to the most generic protection spells from Muddle and Counterspell and Deprive and whatnot. Um, I don't think I really did a lot of spicy stuff in this list. This was kind of like me trying to test run it for her to kind of see what I thought was good and what she may think, and we could have the conversation after. Is there anything here that you're kind of like, ooh, I like this, or eh, I wouldn't play that kind of card?
There were actually a couple of cards I had pulled aside as that I thought they were a little bit spicy. So I did want to ask you about those real quick.
Oh, well, let's do it. What do you
Yeah.
got for me?
So um, Expedite and Crimson Wisp.
Hmm. So those are kind of so my daughter's standard deck is Dargo Ketis.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
those are two staples in any Dargo deck. If you're playing Dargo, both of those cards are in your deck. Doesn't matter what the partner is. And in this deck, we kind of looked at it in the same feature, right? A lot
Mhm.
of Malcolm's problems are giving a creature haste. From Image Crafter to the Changeling to Malcolm itself to even something like Blister Spit or Thermo Alchemist. There's so
Sure.
many cards. If you just gave it haste, you could win the game. So that's kind of what those two cards were about. And at worst, it's a cantrip. It's just a one for one. So,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. I thought those were cool additions. Malcolm does have the issue sometimes from my again limited experience playing with and against the deck, um, that you do have to untap with something. Like
exactly, yeah.
you've got to have one of your pingers has to survive and stick around a lot of the time. Not always if you've got like Fireweaver or whatever. Malcolm, if you want to get in, make some treasures with your commander, Malcolm's got to stick around as well. And
Yep.
yeah, that does happen to solve the issue.
Yep.
Uh, I also wanted to pick your brain about Fire Ice, which is an oldie but a goodie. I do love a good Fire Ice.
Um, it's if I could be honest with you, it's me being old. Um,
That's fair.
truth be told, it's me being old, but I will hit you with this. Some of the best creatures in the format are one butts from Loyal Subordinate, from land untappers, from Kedis. There are a lot of one butts in the format. And having the ability to shoot them down and maybe ping you, or shoot it down and shoot another opponent's creature down as well, is really hard for me to let go. Including the fact
Yeah.
is when you see an Abdel player or a Gretchen player hold up 1 mana, and you're like, you have 1 mana. I could go ice you at the end of turn, including like your land enchantment land, right?
Yeah.
I now
Hmm.
have the ability to ice you at the end of turn and net a card. So it gives me, well, one, like I told you, it's that old feeling I used to get when I played it back in
Yeah.
Apocalypse, right? But also, two, it's still, in my opinion, it's still a good card. It's still so relevant. Like, if Dargo decides to look at you wrong, you could be like, I'll tap that before combat. And let's
Yeah.
be honest, you know if Dargo's about to look at you wrong, right? There's no, like, hiding it. There's no trying to be political and getting your way out of it. You're like, I have the best board, or I'm Dargo's worst matchup. Dargo's
Yeah.
looking at me wrong this game, right? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
so you're just like, no, Dargo, stay there. Give me one more turn. Let me, let me live
Yeah.
a turn, and go from there.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
But
That totally makes sense to me. Yeah. I'm. I'm old too. I remember Fire Ice in its heyday, and I still see some 60 card popper player every now and then too. It's just as you mentioned, there are a lot of targets for fire, and sometimes you need the cantrip and like stop, like you mentioned, the Dargo or something else from coming in and smacking you around. So yeah, I was happy to see it in the list because that is an old favorite of mine as well.
yeah, I have all the DCI promos of it. That's how.
Nice.
Let me rephrase that. The FNM promos. Let
Yep.
me get that
Yep.
correct. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
anything else you kind of saw in here? Or...
Yeah. Yeah. The one other card I wanted to ask you about is Pirate's Prize over something like, I don't know, Behold the Multiverse or Reverse Engineer, something like that. What made you land on Pirate's Prize?
So this one, and there was another one. I don't remember the name of the other one, but the other one was a 3 mana card that said return target creature to its owner's hand and create a treasure token. So it's 3 mana, bound to dude, make a treasure token.
Yep.
So that one didn't make the cut, but this one did. And the reason this one did was because if I had Malcolm in Artillerist or Malcolm in Fireweaver, I could cast this and make the treasure and win the game without haste. Which there's a lot of games where I'm like at 7 treasures for literally no reason.
Sure. Hmm.
And I have all the mana on the planet, but I need to either make an artifact of some sort and win, but I can't because, like, Malcolm's been dead 20 times. So I need to cast the Malcolm, then cast the Fire Reaver, then cast this, which I know sounds like an insane amount of hoops to jump through, but I promise you, I some of the games I even won during that tournament, I had, I think, 9 treasures in play when I won the
Yeah.
game.
Hmm.
And this wasn't
Yeah.
without me comboing off. This was just like cumulative over the turns. I just had 9 treasures and just had literally nothing to do with them. So I
Yeah.
figured this would be perfect. It would make a treasure to start the combo, or it would just net me cards, and technically it's only 3 mana. But getting the artifact at least helps the Fireweaver, at least helps the Artillerist, at least helps the Strongbow, and at least keeps me moving forward with the game plan. So that was kind of like
Yeah.
our thoughts behind it. So
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah. I really do love the amount of like burst card draw that you're running in this deck because, as you mentioned, um, that does seem pretty typical for Malcolm Kedis. Is you'll get Malcolm down, you'll get Kedis down, you'll get an attack in, you'll just start accumulating this pile of treasure tokens, and then
Yep.
sometimes you don't have anything to do with it. So having these card draw spells that'll draw you 2, 3+ cards, um, that seems like the perfect answer to having all these resources sitting around. Is just cash them in, get more resources in your hand, and be able to play them out.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. So not a far leap. A lot of different lists I've seen are really on like careful study and faithless suiting. My daughter isn't actually too familiar with those spells, so I didn't want
Okay.
to incorporate those into this list. So that was kind of like our thoughts that me and her were talking about specifically. So I didn't want to put those in, and I wanted like things like that Pirate's Prize in, to where even though it's more mana, it's just like you said, you just have so much mana sometimes and nothing to do with it. So it's really easy to use that and just keep the wheel turning instead of like slowing down, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
But with that said, let's actually move on. So this one is a very spicy one. So I actually have a ton to say about this one. So let's start. This is Yami-san. So this is Yami's first time in one of these events, and Yami top forward. So congrats to Yami.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, this is with Abdel. Everybody knows Abdel at this point, but this is with a different one. This is Abdel Black with Agent of the Iron Throne. So I wanted to start here, man. Like, so, okay. All right, work with me because I got a lot to say about this deck. So, kind of
Sure, absolutely.
follow me with this one, man. This deck is weird. So, just like it's blue, I don't know what could we call them? Could we call them like cousins? Like, what can we call the blue variant? Because they're so different, but they are still similar at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. It's
It's weird,
I'm
right?
I'm definitely more familiar with the Abdel Blue decks at this point, but that one feels, I don't want to call it more combo oriented, but its combos feel like they may be a little bit easier to assemble than those in Abdel Agent. Like combos are still there for sure, um,
No,
but
no, I think you're actually hitting the nail on the head. This one,
yeah,
the combos are there, but this deck, its plan is not to combo. So let's just go through. Let's hit the combos first, and then let's double back and just look at all the other things here. So as combo pieces, we have the Biblioplex, right? And to the untrained eye, that's it. So it's Biblioplex, any of these draw spells, in Abdo, right? In a flicker. Just the
yeah,
standard thing. So, but actually, if we scroll down here, we still have the generic Journey Oblivion Ring, which we all know from the blue variant. But then we
yeah,
have Omen of the Dead. Omen of the Dead is kind of like weird because Omen of the Dead with 5 rocks in any of these sacrifice creatures like Chain Devil, Demon's Disciple, any of these, if you put one of those creatures underneath Abdel in Omen of the Dead, when you stack the triggers in a specific manner, you'll be able to blink Abdel indefinitely.
mhm,
So that's like another weird combo. But
yeah,
then we have the same combo with White Mane Lion. So if we put White Mane Lion underneath Abdel, that's another combo.
yeah,
Now let's see if we could kind of define combos here real quick. I'm not going to get into all those logistics. But I saw this deck. Well, this deck beat me. Let me rephrase that. This deck beat me the other day on Islane, the Possibility Storm. So shout out to Islane. We were playing this deck specifically on his stream, and Yami was playing this deck. And Yami took a turn to where he continued to cycle and blink and blink and blink and blink and created a disgusting amount of tokens. And they got to a point to where he drew Mirkwood Bats, played the Mirkwood Bats, blinked the tokens, and then it was over 50 the field.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
that was on turn 6. It was disgusting. That's a combo, right? Like, can we just like kind of
Yeah.
agree?
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Like,
that's definitely a combo.
yeah, we were all dead. So, what do you kind of think of these combos, right? They're kind of hard to see at the surface, which also, too, I forgot to mention, Cauldron Familiar is a blink outlet, and so is Hierophant's Chalice, which is there.
Yep.
So, there's really, they're like inconspicuous almost, right? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yeah, I played against this deck twice in the Sanctuary events. I played Yami round one and then again in the finals. And yeah, I was just impressed at how well it could grind, like both times that we played. It has that combo plan, but the thing that really impressed me about it is like you can keep people's hands pretty empty with the full suite of burglar rat effects, and you can like keep people's boards clear with the full suite of flashbag marauder effects, and like blinking any of those with Abdel, and you know the the combos are great if you can put them together, but I think this deck has a lot more to offer than just thinking of it as a typical like quote unquote combo deck. It has a lot of really strong, like incidental almost disruption package too, that'll help it play more of a control game.
Yep. No, I actually completely agree with that. I actually spoke to Yami himself, and he was talking about like it's actually not a combo deck. If it combos, it combos. And
Yeah,
the best example of a card that was able to be presented in that statement is Demir Houseguard. So Demir Houseguard can transmute 4 Biblioplex. But ironically enough, 9 out of 10 times it's actually just being hard casted to say sack a creature.
yeah,
Which was actually demonstrated in the finals. He actually put that into play against you to try to win the game. I don't know, kind of try to. He didn't sneak it in, let's be realistic. He just kind of was like, hey, is this it? Like, are you going to let me beat you?
yeah.
So, yeah. Like, what do you think about cards like that are like dual purposed?
Oh, I mean, Houseguard is probably one of the better creatures in the deck for sure. It can, just being a tutor, but also something that, let's say you have a bunch of those soldier tokens that you've made and you've got agent in play, just you can drain the table out with that guy. That's
Yep.
it's a tutor for something that can be a combo piece, or you know I don't know if it was plan A or if it's plan B, but you can use it to just kill everybody in a slightly more like go manual sort of way. You know,
Yep.
just stack
Exactly.
creatures, deal damage.
Yep, exactly. And so it's really funny because like you kind of already touched on it, right? You touched on burglar rats, and you already said it, right? There's a full set of these in the deck, and there's a full
Yep.
set of these demon disciple sacrifice creature effects. And now with all these new downgrades and newer printings like Nir's Nightblade and Mirkwood Bats, Falconwrath Noble, and Agent of the Iron Throne, now we have a set of win conditions. And
Yep.
like it's so ironic because if you look at like Dust Legion Zealot, come into play, draw a card. Spirited Companion, right? Inspiring
Yep.
Overseer, right? Priest of Ancient Lore, Phyrexian Rager. Like the list goes on and on with this deck of just play sets plus of these cards that are just make this deck so disgustingly redundant. Like,
Yeah.
and I think one of the big winners of this deck was Dread Return. Like,
Oh, for
oof.
sure.
Like,
Yeah.
Dread Return in this deck is disgusting. And let me let me hit you with this card. This is one of the spiciest cards I think in the deck, but I think you're supposed to play it no matter what. And that's Unmake. That's like our awkward sword to plow. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of weird to me. What do you think about that card? Would you even consider playing it, or is it just like a no to you?
Right? So I think that the deck needs it needs interaction like Unmade. It's running Snuff Out, it's running Go for the Throat, it's got Generous Gift. If you really need to kill a creature, you can give them an elephant instead. Um, but having that sort of interaction, that targeted interaction, as opposed to just the sacrifice creatures, I think
Hmm.
that's really important for the deck. If there's one thing, and sorry to take you on a little bit of a tangent, if there's one thing that I think the deck might need an extra piece or two of, it
Hmm.
would be an extra couple free sacrifice outlets, in addition to the Viscera and the
Mm.
different house guard.
I could see
Something
that.
like, yeah, something like, I don't know, Carrion Feeder or Ashnod's Altar. If you really want to get spicy, a Fanatical Devotion might also be pretty cool.
Yeah, I could
Um,
see that. I mean,
just something,
Ashnod
yeah.
sounds awesome though, right? Like, because
Oh,
with all
for
those
sure.
tokens that you make, like those will just pay to sack the Abdel to put it back into play.
Yeah,
I mean, you'll eventually not be able to, but how many times do you have to do it at that point, right? Like you have
exactly.
agent.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
So something like that. They're cards that make your grave flickers better. They also allow you to just kill the table by sacking a full board of soldiers if you've got agent or merkward bats or something. Like the deck list looks very tight, and finding room for them is going to be a little bit tricky.
yep, I
Um,
could see that.
but I don't know that I would cut the unmake if I were trying to find room for these sack outlets.
Yeah.
I would lean towards like Nice Whisper because, as you had mentioned before, we've got so many things that draw cards. There's Astrolabe and Lembas as well, in
Yeah,
addition to
there's
all the
a
creatures that you
lot.
had mentioned. There's a lot of ways to get card advantage in
uh,
this deck, and maybe just a 2 mana 2 for 1 like Nice Whisper isn't where the deck needs to be. Um, but yeah, I would I try to squeeze in one or two more of those sack outlets just so you can draw it and be like, oops, I win. I just sacked the whole board and killed everybody.
yep, I could see
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I definitely see where you're coming from. I mean, this is still a newer list, right? And Yami,
for sure.
there were two in that event that we were in, which was pretty interesting, and both did have a win under their belt, so they weren't, um, you know, coming to not put up results. Like the decks and the players were like, "I'm here to stay." So this
Yeah.
deck was, in my opinion, pretty impressive. Um, I did want to touch on one last thing here. The mana base is 34 lands.
Mhm.
I really appreciate the the small gate package that's here. It's not a big one, but Heap Gate is in this deck, which creates a treasure token.
Mhm.
And by speaking to Yami, which obviously there's only three gates, so it can happen, it might not happen. But
Mhm.
speaking to Yami himself was just like, I like Heapgate. The reason I like the Heapgate is because if I cannot miss a land drop with this deck. As
Yeah.
long as I draw lands, this deck is gas. So having a land that has potential to create a treasure token to keep you moving forward, I think is somewhat notable. So, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I can see that. I was the I believe he played a Heat Gate in one of the games that I was playing against him. I don't remember if it was the finals or not, but it was just kind of a colorless land. I I do appreciate that the potential is there. I wonder if there aren't enough like playable gates though uh to
Functional.
make it something that's going to happen more than like once in a blue moon.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't like Yami doesn't, but I wouldn't add expedition map or something to try and find it. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, I
Yep.
don't know. It's not something that I would probably put in the list, but I don't hate it. And when it comes up and you do get the combo together of like Heapgate, Orzhov, Guildgate, and start cranking out treasures, yeah, I could. I mean, I could see that being powerful. I just, I also wonder if you might have other things to do with your mana too.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah,
Yep.
I,
But
I do love the rest of the mana base. I like that he's playing 34 lands. Bajuka Bog, very important, obviously. Witch's
yeah.
Cottage, a very good land for sure. Um, I
Yep.
do like a lot of the mana base there.
Yeah, definitely. You could tell kind of like when a player actually cares about like their mana base and stuff. I've always kind of noticed that in the past where they're like, let me test this out because ironically, if you look at the mana base, you have one, two, three, four lands that come into play tapped total. Heatgate
Mm-hmm.
doesn't actually even come into play tapped. So just
Right.
being a colorless land, I don't think is even a problem because of, I mean, what are we on? 14 rocks here?
Mm-hmm.
So, like,
Yep.
with that amount of rocks, like, having
Yeah.
Heapgate, I don't find to be an issue. And Witch's Cottage, essentially 50% of the time comes into play untapped. So, with those odds, I think we're not really hurting too bad with two lands coming into play tapped in this entire minute, or three lands, sorry, coming
Yeah.
into play tapped. So,
They're the mana base or the mana costs of the deck also aren't incredibly punishing. Like there's Unmake. You need to have a swamp for Snuff Out at some point. But
yep.
like there's a lot of just one pip cards. A lot of them.
Yeah,
Crypt
definitely.
Rats also need a lot of black mana, but like having a random colorless land in there, it's not gonna hurt you. Like 90% of the games. It's not gonna
Yep.
be the thing that's keeping you down because almost all of your cards have one pip at most in the colors. And as you mentioned before, plenty of rocks, plenty of things to do with that colorless mana to turn it into colored mana. So yeah.
Exactly. Well, with that said, let's actually kind of jump to a little subject. So, with those three decks, before we actually get to the winner of the event, let's
Mhm.
actually kind of delve a little bit into the Richest Rags event. Um, what do you think? Do you think that these decks could have any repercussions to the Richest Rags?
So um, so as somebody that is newer to the format and somebody that did want to go and you know I live about 4.5, 5 hours from Detroit, where the RIW tournament was,
Mm-hmm.
and I did. If I'm driving that far, and I know there are going to be people that are coming from a pretty good distance to go to the Philly event, I wanted to make sure that I had something viable and that I was going to give myself the best chance of doing well in that event.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a result of that, I definitely absolutely looked at the top winning the winning decks, the decks that topped recent events, and made sure that they were in my testing gauntlet. That I
Yep.
spent extra resources on both putting them together in paper so I could like give them to friends and be like, here, play this deck against me. Playing them on Mox Field, making sure that I knew those decks inside and out because maybe there is a little bit of a recency bias, but seeing a deck do well is going to make, I think, make other people want to pick that thing up and hopefully
Yep.
recreate that success, right?
Yep, exactly, exactly. Especially that there were two here, and that I think they both did really well. Especially kind of like talking
Mm-hmm.
about Abdel, and
Yeah,
everybody always talks about Malcolm, right? But Malcolm actually hasn't really topped anything, excluding Clay did in the first Sanctuary series, specifically
yeah,
with
mm-hmm.
Malcolm Dargo. But Malcolm
Yep,
Dargo is a bit different than Malcolm Kettis, so this was kind of like, well, we have Malcolm, now we have Gretchen. Like we
yep.
have all like the standard culprits, right, that are topping these events. So we have the one off deck, and let's kind of shoot into the winner of the event. So just give me a moment. Let me pull that deck list up, and yeah, here we go. The first place winner of the event is none other than, well, my daughter.
Yeah.
So, yeah, her name is Caitlin, and yeah, she beat the crap out of me in the finals. If you did not see that already, that's what she did. I was her glorified punching bag in the finals. So yeah, David.
Yeah, she murdered me round one too.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
I played her. I played Yami and I both played her twice, and she definitely took me out round one.
yep. So this is a deck that me and Puzzle have actually spoke quite a bit about in the past on episodes, and we've always kind of used this deck as kind of like a stepping stone. So, for instance, if your deck cannot beat this deck, you're going to struggle in the popper format. Or, for instance, if you miss a land drop against this deck and it's doing what it's doing, you have just lost the game, right? Like, if you do that and you miss a land drop or two against a control deck or a mid range deck, right? There's time for you to claw back into the game, right? But against this deck, no. You don't have removal. By turn 5, you have lost the game. And
Yeah,
I don't know, what do you think about that finals? I think that was kind of relatively apparent when me and you kind of got cluttered with a grip of counter spells,
yeah,
almost
yeah.
trying to
We both.
stop each other, right? Because like that was kind of like we're combo decks trying to stop the other combo decks, and then the aggro
Yeah,
deck kind of just ran us over. What are your thoughts on
absolutely.
that?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. We both wound up. Gator cast a peak, I believe. I don't think it was a probe. It was a peak, and
yeah,
saw my hand and realized that we were both pretty dead. We
yeah,
both had a lot of interactive spells, but only like on the stack or protection, and the board was already like, here's Dargo, here's here's Dargo, he's coming for us,
yep.
and there was nothing we could do about it. Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty sad because you're just like, it's ironic, right? Because in RIW, my first round was against a young man by the name of Jackson, which is the same age as my daughter, and her name is also Jackson. So when he sat down across from me and told me to my face there could only be one, and I told him, bro, our names are the same, and he said that to me, and then told me that Gut Leader was the best deck in format and I'm gonna lose, I was just like, oh no. I'm at my house, and then
yeah,
I end up playing my daughter, right, in the finals, and it was like the same thing. Yeah, I'm like, oh no.
yeah,
She's good. I was like, I'm mulligan and mulligan, and I was like, yeah, no. I'm keeping this. This
yeah.
is solid. Let's see what we can make from it. And yeah, got
It's
blitzed over.
yeah,
So,
it's funny when I was testing Aranis Street Urchin for RIW, I actually stopped testing the Dargo Ketis matchup because I realized if if the Dargo player wants me dead, I'm dead. There's nothing I can do. You know, I they can play out a 7-5 quicker than I can get Aranis Street Urchin set up a lot of the time,
yep.
and they can just swing at me. Just a couple times they can swing in Buccaneers bravado, and I'm out of the game. And that's just a thing that I
Yep.
had to accept. If I play against this deck, sometimes that happens.
Yep.
So
So
yeah,
it's actually really funny that you say that because I've actually said that in the past to people where they're like, "This is unwinnable. There has to be something I could do," and I'm like, "No, you don't. You don't try to protect yourself in that match. And the reason you don't is because that's your one bad match. Just let it be bad.
let it be
You
bad.
are good against all the other decks. Why would you take cards out that are good against them, make those matches worse, just to make this match that is still pretty unwinnable better? Just let it go. If you play against the Dargo Kedis or the Dargo Kelith or the Dargo Malcolm,
Yeah,
accept your fate. There's
yeah,
two other players at the table. Maybe they don't pick you, right?
yeah.
Like,
Maybe you get lucky and you're not the one that's getting swung at. But
yep, exactly. But let's, with all that said, we kind of went on a little tangent there.
sure, yeah,
Let's talk about this deck list. Let's talk about this deck list because she won. And let me give her the credit that is deserved here because she's been playing this deck for a long time. This was actually the deck I introduced her to the format. And some things that I think is very important to note about this deck is that it has a sub goblin theme in the deck, which I think
Yeah,
you've noticed. So like with
yeah,
Goblin Matron being able to get all these little goblins as far in the tank as Goblin Grenade.
yeah.
So
Hmm.
it is a true burn deck at heart. From the other thing I'd like to add about that, which is kind of jumping subjects, is the pingers, Blister Spit, Scamp, Firebrain Archer, Flame Breather. Like, all of these cards just globally affect your opponents. And
Yeah,
they're, on the surface, I don't think people kind of respect them. Because this is mono red, right? You're like, oh, there's no Fidian Eye. Oh, you're not really drawing a bunch of cards when you do it. But in truth, this deck could have some explosive turns where it's just like, oh, I have Impact Tremors. Here's Dargo. Sack the Dargo. Here's Dargo again. Sack the Dargo. Here's Dargo again. And you're just getting like trigger on trigger on trigger and using like Krankos Command and Rally at the Hornburg and Koldatha Rebirth. And you just keep slamming Dargo 7 times in one turn and using some weird sacrifice effect to keep putting Dargo back into play. What do you think about that? Like, what are your overall thoughts on some of these cards?
yeah. I think um, so. From my experience, aggro and Voltron strategies, they have a tendency of being very good at taking out one player. They can often take out two players, and sometimes they really struggle getting that third person dead,
Mm-hmm.
just because of how it works. You have to focus on one person at a time. Kedis in the Dargo deck shores up that issue a lot. If you can stick them both, you're whacking the whole table for a lot of damage.
Yep,
But the pingers
exactly.
also do that as well. You can get as you're, you know, shifting your attacks around. That's something Caitlin did really well. Is focusing down one player, and then sometimes she would switch it up and like hit me instead, and mark me as well. That gets everybody's life totals to a point where she could just play a Kessig Flame Breather and a Firebrand Archer, and we're all low enough that a few spells and that'll close the game out.
Yep.
Maybe Dargo's been dealt with somehow. Maybe Dargo costs too much and there's not sacrifice fodder, though she always had plenty of sacrifice fodder, let's be
Oh
honest.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's
but
Dargo.
maybe that's the thing that happens. Like you've got these extra sources of damage that um, can deal with the table and get those last few points of damage in.
Yep.
So yeah, I think they're pretty important to the way the deck is built.
Yep. I definitely agree. One deck that I actually have spoken about quite a bit is I like to compare with Dargo and Kedis is Loyal Subordinate. Similar to what you said, Aggro typically has a problem being able to close the game because it can't beat all three players simultaneously. And Kedis, exactly like what you're saying, shores that up, just like Loyal Subordinate. And I've always found Loyal Subordinate and Dargo and Kedis to be right on par with one another. And they're just, they both have their different weaknesses and strengths, but one is just as good as the other. And if you choose to not play removal, and one of those decks shows up at the table, understood that you have lost the game. There's not running away from it. It's just like, here's a turn one loyal subordinate. And you're like, seriously? Or it's like, here's a turn two Darigo. And you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah,
Like,
oh for sure.
yep, exactly, exactly. But
Yeah.
with this deck, once again, congratulations to you, Caitlin. But I know Philly has been known for their aggro.
I've heard that as well. Yes.
Yep. So I really think if anybody has been keeping up with this and keeping up with these sanctuary events and whatnot, I really think that this is going to influence the Philly event a little bit, especially with Kenneth being so strong. I mean, even let's just remove Dargo out of the equation. Kenneth with other partners that allows you to hit the table simultaneously is so incredibly powerful. Do you think this deck, and also too, this is Aggro's first time winning an event. Do you think this is going to have any ramifications on the Philly event?
I would not be surprised. I mean, if I were going to Philly, I would definitely add this deck to my testing gauntlet, and I'd make sure that my deck has the interaction to deal with a Dargo that might be coming at me as early as turn 3. I
Yeah,
would, I, that's or just you know be comfortable with with
the
maybe
loss.
dying.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean that
but
that is a
definitely,
thing though. Like I mean, if you're okay with losing to the DAC, I think that's something you have to come to terms with, truth be told, right? Like you have to be like, this is a bad match. I accept losing to this if it shows up. So,
yeah, but yeah, just from talking to people that played in Philly last time, I I would have to imagine that this with this result shows up as it shows up on people's radar as one of the best aggro decks in the format now. Like
yep.
nothing against Gut Leader. Gut Leader is still a fantastic aggro deck. This one has a win and a very recent one for the event,
Yep.
and I would not be surprised to see at least a couple few copies of it there.
Yeah. I mean, isn't it like so like we said before, you're an older player, I'm an older player. Let's be honest. Isn't red deck wins like that traditional deck you bring to an event if you're just like new to the format, right? That's what this deck is
Oh,
even
absolutely.
supposed to be. You just kind of like close your eyes and go.
Yeah, yeah. I played at SDG Con, and this is a total tangent, but years ago they had a Pauper Classic that got over 100 people. I think it was close to
Oh,
120.
oh wow.
Um, it was like the biggest Pauper event outside of Italy. Like Pauper Geddon and stuff, those get a lot of people, but this was like one of the largest stateside Pauper events. And I went there and I played Burn. Like
Yep.
I have I
Yep.
have the Pauper format at my disposal. I traded a bunch of Commander staples when I was getting into the format, and I just kind of got cards for almost every deck. And I played Burn. I think it was a strong choice at the time, and it's definitely there's also things to consider like fatigue over the course of playing Magic for however many hours at
Oh
a
yeah.
big event. Like
Yep.
and there's a big difference in this format. The aggro decks do have a ton of decision points, and
Yes.
they're much more difficult to play than when you're playing one on one and have one opponent. Um, but yeah, being able to slam a 7-5 and be like, hey, can you guys deal with this, or do I get to kill everybody? Like that.
Yep.
That's to somebody, especially somebody who maybe doesn't follow the format as much. I could see that being an attractive option.
Yep. Yep. I agree. I mean, this deck is pretty geared to new players as long as you could do the math, I would say. If you could
Yeah.
do the Dargo math, you're good. Do the Dargo math and you're solid. Because this has a lot of sneaky ways to like these double strike spells. I mean,
Yep.
the deck is well built. My daughter helped me build it for a very long time now. It's been in a very long time development. And I think it was noticeable in the finals, which you guys can actually go back if you would like. Uh, go into Sanctuary on the YouTube. They actually like saved the VOD there this time. Bobby did a great job. It's saved there. You can actually watch her play this deck card for card in the finals,
Yep.
and you could see exactly how she took down three combo decks. She used one of them as a punching bag, and Kedis did the work. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just It's easy, easy peasy. So,
Yeah,
but anything else you'd like to hit anybody with, David, about maybe Philly or anything along those lines, or?
yeah. I will say one of the funny things I've noticed about Dargo Kedis is not the hate that Dargo draws, but that Kedis draws. There will be several times where somebody attacks with a Dargo, and the Kedis will get like killed or bounce. It's like you can hit that person with Dargo.
Yeah.
Don't hit me. Dargo can stick around. Dargo can get his beats on, but get that lizard out of here.
Yep.
So that's it's a funny play pattern.
Yep. Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, I've actually noticed that more recently. That used to not be the case. That's actually
Okay.
a new thing that's been actually kind of rearing its head, which is kind of unique. So, but I mean, with that, I have nothing more, man. Anything else you got for him?
Yeah, just good luck to everybody going to Philly. I'll be really excited to see who winds up taking that down and what the top four looks like.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And again, hey, thank you so much for joining me today and welcome to the team. And it was a pleasure having you here with me today. So,
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
yeah,
I'm
so,
looking forward to it in the future.
oh, very much so, man. Me as well. So, guys, thanks again. And yeah, I don't have puzzle here to end it for me. So it's weird, right, guys? Ah, it's so weird. But all right, you guys. So please give us a like, give us a subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, you guys, until next time.